Get ready to show up with Khoolaid and Sarah. It's the show up show, baby. Boom, welcome to it. You know how we do it. It's the show up show. Your homegirl Khoolaid
And Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, my beautiful best friend / therapist /
all the things.
lifelong get me in trouble in the streets. Oh God. So they're so not ready for this one. I don't think I'm ready for this one. I feel a certain weird way inside. Like I feel like a certain type of nervous, but then a certain type of so freaking comfortable.
Yes.
Like I have the weirdest internal feeling right now. Why don't you introduce our next guest?
Okay. That's a big lead up.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this. I was, first of all, very excited for this guest. Yeah. And I was thinking about how I was going to do the introduction because it's so meaningful and so big for me. So I think I'm going to just start with how this human came into my life.
I think that's cool, but I think we need to say his name. And then the other thing we need to do is say that this is the reason, this guy right here, that the Show Up Show is here. When this story came into our lives, we wanted to tell stories like this because we were like, it doesn't get any more broken open than this.
100%.
So do you
I
want
don't
to?
think I've ever even told you that.
No.
Yeah,
I'm flattered.
tell you that.
I'm flattered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is Bruce Lisker.
It's me.
This is Bruce.
This is Bruce.
This
guys.
is me.
Here he is.
Showing up.
Here's
Showing
Bruce.
up.
Bruce, you know what? According to Wiki, why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Oh, I'm a wrongly convicted individual. At 17, I was wrongly accused, framed, and sent to prison for the murder of my mother in 1983.
And you were in prison for how long?
26 years, 5 months, and 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Who's counting?
And
who's counting?
Yeah.
And Sarah, who
Who's
is
counting?
Bruce Lisker to you?
I mean, I think I have to just start it all off where it started.
Let's do it.
Let's just go.
Let's go.
So I'm at home and I get a phone call from my mom and it starts with, "Are you sitting down?" Which is never a good place to start with me because it's like, just tell me just get to the point. No, I'm not sitting down. I'm not going to sit down.
I can't take this.
Just
our lives were already like kind of shambled at that point.
Our lives were already going in a direction that was like, I need no more can you sit down moments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
None.
So
I said, "Mom, I'm not sitting down. Just get to it. What is the point?" And so she said, "Well, I'm reading a letter right now." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "I'm going to read it to you." And I said, "Okay." And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the specific words, but I remember the point of the letter. So she starts reading and she said, it basically said, "Hi, my name is Bruce. I think I might be related to you," or something along those lines. Again, I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything from you. I just want to know who you are. I've had a very interesting life and I'm okay, but I would like to meet you, or I would like to know who you are. Something along those lines. And as she's reading, my brain's not comprehending. I'm like, "Oh, somebody wrote you a letter. That's nice." And so I said, okay, well, that's nice. And she's like, "Do you not understand what this means?" And I'm like, "Somebody is related to us." But great. And she's like, "No, your dad has a son that I didn't know about." And I'm like, "Oh." Oh.
It's crazy to hear the other side.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, how old is he?" And she said, "Well, he's older than your brother, our other brother."
Yes.
And I said, "Well, great, Mom. It was before you. Don't worry about it. It's fine." And she's like, "It's not fine. He had a son that he didn't tell me about, that he knew, and I don't know what to do with this." And I'm like, "Huh. Okay, well, that's not that bad, Mom. Like, we're good." So she, do you want me to pause or do you want me to keep going? What do you want me to do?
Yeah, let's.
Okay, we'll pause for her so
Yeah.
she doesn't die on camera.
Yeah.
That might be some good.
I hate that. It's like when you try not to cough,
And
like
then it just goes crazy.
you're gonna cough way more.
And it goes.
Yeah,
Are you okay?
that's okay.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, I was just choking on the story.
Yeah.
This is a lot, you guys.
This is so much.
It happens.
So she said,
We're
"So
used to
here's his name, and apparently you have a brother."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So my kids come in the room, and I said, "Well, Nana just called, and it turns out that you guys have an uncle. I have a brother I didn't know about." And I said, but there's
So at this point, it's just a brother.
it's just a brother.
This is like, it's just your average.
It's just your brother.
that sends a letter.
Right.
And
Ordinary.
Everybody does the DNA tests now, and we
Right.
find out
We have a
uncle had
brother.
baby we didn't know about.
He's a CPA.
Yeah,
He's just a guy.
Yeah,
He's just a guy.
Yeah.
So we hang up. Okay. So the kids come in and I'm telling them the story. And I said, but part of the letter I kept going back to where he said, I've led an interesting life. Okay. And I'm like, I led an interesting life. Huh. The therapist in me was like, that feels like a place to probably dig.
Mhm.
Right. So I call mom back and I said, just out of curiosity, what's his name? Just tell me his name. Because he's led an
Also,
interesting.
This is how you found out.
This is how I found out.
Oh.
So I said,
didn't even
tell
get this
me.
part.
I know.
Tell me his name. Because an interesting life to me means there's some digging to be done, right?
Yeah.
So she tells me your name. So I say, okay. So I hang up. The boys are still in there, and Chase, my older son, who is super like me, intuitive, and wants to continue digging. He's like, well, let's look him up. And I'm like, let's look him up. Bruce Lisker, who was wrongly convicted of killing his adoptive mother and spent 26 years in San Quentin for a crime he did not commit. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Mom, are you sure you spelled the name? Like, look at the
Wait,
spelling.
what?
Are you sure? And I'm like, let me see an image. And your image popped up. And it was like looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
And it was like looking at dad, a younger version of dad. And I was like, this is my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, the boy
Just
version
like
of
that,
Sarah.
For sure. Yeah.
The boy. And then when I met you and sent her a picture, and she's like, it's you like if he is you with a wig on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you lost your
Right.
hair, girl, you go, that's
That's you.
Yeah.
Well, and then
Yeah.
she calls me up and she said, "Are you sitting down?" I got the same. I got the
Sure.
secondary of that
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
And she was telling me, and I was just thinking, we could not write this shit in a Netflix original.
No.
Like, this is not like, and and at first I was scared. I'm like,
Aw.
I don't like this guy's been in my, I didn't
Right.
know what to expect.
Right.
Oh.
So many people say they're innocent. Like we really started
Yeah.
to go down
Yeah.
to that,
Right.
that
Yeah,
rabbit,
rabbit
hole.
hole.
For a second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to be able to have met you and just fell in love with you, and you're just,
Aw.
you've been such a huge part of Sarah and my journey, and just the poster guy for the show up, the poster guy for, you had no other choice than to show up.
No.
To just show up.
Yeah.
And specifically, I want to talk about the generalization of you showing up, but more important and more personal to me is the showing up in my life at the time that you showed up.
Yeah.
And I have said this to you, and we have had this conversation, that I believe that the universe put you in my life at the exact moment that I needed you to be in my life.
Yeah.
Because
I think
we
so,
met,
Yeah.
and 3 months later, my husband died.
Yeah.
But you have been such a pillar of strength and love and stability, and really the embodiment of showing up for somebody.
Mm.
And I haven't
Yeah.
had a lot of that in my life. And so you have been such a tremendous gift to me in that way, in that I know what it feels like to have a man show up in my life that's got me and has really fucking got me.
Yep.
I do.
The gift,
I do.
there are no words for what that gift has been. Just you as a human.
Thank you.
And then to know your story
Yeah.
and to know what you have been through. And yet here you are, the embodiment of love and grace and kindness and
Hope.
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 That's what blows my mind.
Like you have every reason to be the biggest asshole on the planet.
Yeah.
And you are the
Thank you.
opposite of that.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm blown away by that. Thank you so much. I mean, just adoration is just so mutual. You know that. I do got you, and I always will. You learn as much as you learn how to be in there, how to survive, how to, put one foot in front of the other, you learn what you don't want. And what I didn't want was fake or empty words or to be bitter or to be, consumed with any of that. You didn't meet her, but I had a stepmom who married my dad a few years after my first mom's murder. And she was just a godsend. She just kept me on a positive path, beginning in my heart. Like she was the first to say, you have every right to be bitter and angry and all of this, but think about, who's going to carry that around? It's you, and I really got that. And so I believe in taking the best and leaving the rest. And so I wanted love in my life. I wanted connection. I wanted, I didn't want bitterness. I didn't want to carry anything like that around. So, sorry to surprise you, but
Yeah. Yeah.
She just didn't.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say also when the boys found out who their uncle was,
Oh, yeah.
it's like the biggest flex ever because it's
Oh
like
my
nobody.
gosh.
Chase would go, hi, and he'd go, Bruce Lisker, an American male who at age 17 was, and like he'd
Yeah,
read
he
like
would read
the,
Amazon.
yeah, he memorized the
It
Wikipedia.
was like he would scream to the Amazon. Amazon, we'd be in the house. Who's Bruce Lisker? And I'm like, okay, old party trick. Let's stop because Uncle Bruce has his own identity now.
At this point.
It's real cute that Amazon has an identity for him.
Right,
But
right.
yeah.
no, this is our Uncle Bruce.
Right.
Yeah.
This is our guru, coach,
Right.
Zen,
Mentor, Zen.
mentor.
Right,
Yeah, this
right,
is
right.
not who Amazon is saying he is.
However, the kids also, right? If anybody ever fucks with him, it's like, listen, my uncle was in San Quentin for 26 years.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest flex ever
Street
for
cred,
them.
just like
Total
cred.
street cred.
From you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is going to be a hard part. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but this
no,
is going to be
go.
a hard part, but I want to detach you two from the personal side a little bit
Yeah,
because his story needs to be out there.
I was just
more.
gonna go
His
there.
Story needs to be
100%.
told.
100%.
So, Bruce,
Yeah.
that is
It's not
yours.
mine.
No,
Is
I
it?
took the label off for you,
Oh, okay.
so we weren't promoting 7-Eleven.
Is it like an obsessive?
unless they
Oh,
wanna
I
pay
was
us.
wondering, is
Yeah.
it like
Pay
a,
us to remove
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
7-Eleven. If
Alright.
you'd like to
If you'd
pay
like to
us,
pay
we'll
us.
put your label back on.
That's
Be
right.
more than happy to support you.
So let's discuss your life, how all this happened, coming up, being I mean, there's so many layers to this. The
Right.
child who didn't have his biological parents.
adoptee?
Was
yeah.
adopted.
And
Yeah, it's
that
adopted.
part.
Mhm.
I mean, you have so many layers to your story.
Mhm.
Let's start with that younger layer. Let's start with young.
Sure. I was
Bruce.
adopted at 2 days of age by Robert and Dorca Lisker, and he was a lawyer and she was a film negative cutter for Hollywood until she hung that up to take care of me and raise me. And we lived in suburban Sherman Oaks, pocket neighborhood there, bedroom community, right around the corner from an elementary school, Hesby, that I went to. Loved it. It just,
What was your
kids-
relationships with your parents growing up?
it was, I was always told that I was adopted. And so, but every kid feels like super weird and like just wants to like blend in. I wanted my name to be John, not Bruce. I just wanted to just,
John.
yeah,
That's
just
what you would pick, John.
something. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted something that would just blend. I
Right.
just want to blend. Can I blend?
Right.
Couldn't blend. So I was fortunately, there were a number of other adoptees on the block, coincidentally.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a trippy, thing. But so I wasn't unique in that regard, but I felt like
Sure.
I stood out like a sore thumb. But I had a great time riding my bicycle around and then skateboard later on and Little League, Encino Little League. Yeah, Boy Scouts and stuff like that. And then, the kids on the street at a certain point in time started smoking weed.
The
And
Weeds.
So
The weeds.
The weeds. Yeah.
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 Smoking
they
the
did,
weeds.
They did the weeds.
The weeds.
Got weeded up all the time. It was like so weeded.
Yeah.
So weeded.
And so I started living a weeded existence as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I was about 11. So 76.
You started smoking weed at 11.
Yeah. Why wait?
Terrifying.
Why
Yeah.
wait? I know.
Terrifying.
I mean, it's all terrifying. The older that we get, the
Right.
younger like everybody looks until you're like, those are like infants. Like I was doing, yeah. So that's kind of my folks' reaction. Well, my dad started smoking cigarettes when his dad passed away, and he became the man of the house. He was 7,
Oh,
so
so you waited at least.
he was like, "What took you so long,
Right.
kid?"
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
You're a man.
Smoke up, Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny.
Weeds.
There you go.
There you
The
go,
Weeds.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny and the Weeds.
Johnny and the Weeds was the name of my first band.
Like it.
It wasn't.
Should be.
Should be. Could be. So yeah, no, the Weeds.
And so then what the weeds led to
Weeds and grades are like, oil and water. And so I didn't get good grades.
Got it.
And so it was like, you need to stop the weeds. And
Mhm.
I was like, I don't want to stop the weeds. The weeds are fun. All the kids were like kind of doing it, the older kids. So I was hanging out with like a year and 2 and 3 older kids on the street because that's where the fun was. And so that's what we were doing. Eventually, it was like a counselor somewhere said, and we were going to therapy and stuff like that. And it's just, I just wanted to be like, I wanted to write poetry, ride my skateboard, and smoke weed. That's all
Yeah.
I wanted to do. And eventually, like, we got recommended to see a counselor we came to see a counselor that recommended a boys' home in Susanville, away from the big city. So I was sent to this boys' home in Susanville for a few years, off and on. Like I would come home for vacations and stuff.
Because the
So
weed and grades.
because of the weeds and grades, yeah.
Okay.
And unfortunately,
What was that like? What was that
was just
experience?
gonna
that
ask,
sucked.
being sent.
That big sucked. It was away from the city. It was away from all my friends. I was already like a shy kind of, kid. I mean, it was a super depressed period.
Sure.
Of
Well,
time.
and I'm
I
sure
didn't
you
like
already
it.
questioned the fact that you were adopted
Right.
and what your real parents and how they.
At
Well,
a-
I don't want
at
to
a
say
core-
your real
at a-
parents.
at a-
wrong
at a
word.
core
Sorry,
wounding.
your
Birth
birth parents.
Yeah.
Correction. I'm sorry. Your birth parents and
Yeah.
feeling a little like
Yeah.
that.
At a core wounding level, like being adopted is basically like you don't you smell for your mom, and she's either there or she's not, and she wasn't.
Hmm.
It was like somebody else was, and they smelled different than they should have. An infant knows, you know. And so that must have been laid down. And then to be sort of like shipped off to a place didn't feel good either. So it was a core wounding kind of a thing. I'm not trying to be like, wow, 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 or poor me. That's not really where I want to come from at all. But
Well,
it was it was part of
No,
it.
it's
It was
not
what
about
was going on.
You and I have had this discussion because of,
Yeah.
when my son was having a little bit harder of a time, my fear of like ever wanting him to feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know everybody has to do and make their own decisions. There's
Yeah.
different situations and I get that. But I just can't imagine as a young soul how I would feel being detached out of my space,
Yeah.
being
Sent away. You're
Sent
bad, so
away.
you got to go.
yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Right. And that feeling.
It was weird. And like none of the other kids. So like I would go to this, to Susanville. Susanville is where it was. And then I would come back for vacation and it would be like, wow, man, like you're back, and it was such a trippy thing. Like I was the only one too. So everybody else, they were all staying there. And then I'd go away and come back.
Mhm.
And again, I was like this, like singled out kind of,
You weren't John.
yeah, I
You
wasn't
weren't the one
John.
that fit
I didn't blend.
Yeah.
Didn't blend. Nor did you imagine, nor did you feel like you were home anywhere.
Actually, coming back to LA
Hmm.
felt super home.
Hmm.
It was like coming back to my neighborhood and hanging out with, my friends
Mhm.
felt super, super home. And I didn't want to leave
Sure.
again. And
So
then,
the facility, did that help you through it?
yeah, it
Or
was,
did that take you back
which facility?
when
Susanville?
Susanville.
Susanville. So Susanville was a boys' home that, yeah, it was more of an affluent kind of a place, actually. Like the people that went there were like, yeah,
Were you exposed to more there?
more what?
More weeds,
Less.
but on
No,
a deeper
no, no,
level?
no,
No.
no. They would give us like $5 a week allowance. There was
Okay.
really a dearth of weed there. There was like not a lot of weed. Nobody
Okay.
grew. Nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
So it was like really hard to get.
Okay.
And then like the foreman, his main job was to like check our eyes when we came back from town. We were like,
Right.
6 miles out of town, and when we go to town for school, he was checking when we came back, and like, or if we were drinking or whatever, because a lot of kids wound up going to that place for the same reason I did. It was a mixed use kind of a place. So some of them were like wards of the court and kind of foster kids, but most were like parents who were like, you need to get away from the weeds.
So you came home
Yeah.
and then
Smoked weeds.
got
Went
it.
back, right back
Went
to
right
the weeds.
back.
Slingshot. I mean, Bo pulled way back. I really wanted to do the weeds. And so I wanted to smoke weed. That's what I wanted to do. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the mid 1970s. That was what was happening.
And then
So-
where did the
happening.
direction did it then what? Then what was the next step?
so every time I came back, it was funny. Every time I came back, like it seemed like they were experimenting with something new. Like
Let's try something else for
one
him.
time I came back and it was like acid. And I was like, that's nuts. It blew the top of my head off. It was like,
They
like,
thought you were doing acid.
no, they were doing acid.
they
They're
were
like,
doing
something
acid.
new is around. It's,
Got
yeah,
it.
we're doing acid. I was like, that is trippy. Like I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know what to do with that
Mm-hmm.
except join them. And so that vacation back I did. So we all took acid. But to me, that was like the bastion of like the Jimi Hendrixes and the Janis Joplins and
Mhm.
Morrison and stuff. It was like people of legend like did those drugs, and we're just like, Southern California weed heads.
That was the time.
Until then. But yeah. So experimentation with that like kicked in. And then one summer I came back and I was like, I'm not going back to Susanville. I'm just not going. It'd be like, just like sit down and like, I'm not going to school. And
Yeah.
what? And they're like, okay, guess we can't like lift him up. He's discovered.
Yeah, you
this.
figured your power.
He's
Right.
he's
Right.
discovered
Yeah.
just blatant refusal. So yeah, and so I was re-enrolled in Birmingham. Actually, it was about the time that I came back to Birmingham, and then eventually, though, I dropped out of school because I didn't really want to do anything except smoke pot and just kind of hang out in my apartment. Well, my folks got me an apartment because I don't know how somehow I heard that it was an option. Like maybe it would be easier if we just got him an apartment. I was like,
Yes,
Yeah.
it would.
So hit that one hard.
Right.
Right? So like, what about that apartment? That apartment certainly would fix everything, So eventually they were like, yeah, find an apartment and we'll get you an apartment.
At 17.
So at 16, wait, 16.
At 16.
Yeah, 16. So I looked in the Times or the Herald Examiner, I forget which, and found a place for $210 a month at Sepulveda and Victory.
Wow.
It is
At 16.
It was such.
Was it the Sepulveda and it is now?
Oh, it was. If anything, yeah, about the same. If anything, maybe even worse. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
It was. Flash forward years later to my proving my innocence. Well, one of the people who did that and helped in that was an internal affairs sergeant from LAPD, who, when I told him, like after all of this was done, when I told him where I lived, he went, "You lived in that building? That's like 40% of our calls."
Is that building that you lived in at 16 years
building.
old?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like people would parole there, and like I didn't know. I just thought,
Sure.
hey, you could buy weed here pretty easy, but you could do everything else too.
Right.
And so it was there that I was exposed to the person that I believe helped Mike Ryan plan the murder.
Mm-hmm.
Really bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Dad was a gangster, mafia type gangster, and from Florida, and just really, and that was like, it was a really unsafe place. But anyway, so I dropped out of high school and got my folks rented me this place for $210 a month, $210 a month, worth every penny.
Can we get into
And
the
also
story?
send you to rehab.
Yeah, we've
right?
gone.
Did they also send you to rehab?
Yeah. So one of the things that they did, just in addition to Susanville, was we're gonna get you in 12-step.
Okay.
Like we got to get your butt in 12-step. And so we did. We started going to something called the Palmer Drug Abuse Program, which used to operate in Southern California. It's from Texas.
And weed was the only thing you were
No.
doing?
I was experimenting with
You were.
other
Okay.
things too. Yeah. So I was smoking weed. The kids on the street were occasionally cocaine and LSD and mushrooms, and that's about it with them. Then John, who's the person whose dad was a mob guy, used meth. And he was like, "Hey, this is fun. If you think that's fun." And so I was like, he used needles. And I was like, never in my life can I use a needle. And he was like, "Oh, okay, whatever, but, I'll give you, a snort or whatever." So I was doing like lines of that stuff. But then again, going back to like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison and all the people who are dead, by the way.
Right.
Most related to that, that very thing, they would shoot up. But so I was like, why not, try it. So I stuck up my arm and he injected meth. And it was like, there's a reason people do that. There's a reason it does not suck. It sucks what you're doing to yourself, but it does not suck in an experiential way. It is amazing. And so, yeah. So ultimately, thank God I wasn't involved in it very long. The way that I got away from the streets and couldn't continue doing that was not the prettiest thing to happen to your life. But when I was arrested, um, stopped using everything.
So it was such an easy answer in the arrest. Your your drug use and I
Oh
mean at
yeah,
that
it was.
point
It was. I was the worst character witness for myself, wasn't I? I mean, I was like, self-admitted, did this and used this and tried this, and everybody that the cops would talk to were like, yeah, he was total pothead, and did this and this and this, and then the police go, oh, he did this and this and this. What do you mean? Occasionally, their story is then that you were like super addicted to everything.
Sure.
They
Living on the
don't. They don't.
street,
Yeah, they
shooting
don't.
up every day.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't. They don't thrive on like accuracy, especially
Right.
when they're accusing you of a horrible crime.
Sure.
Much easier for them to say, and name a drug that is erosive of the very soul.
and that's who
So
you are as your identity.
that's your
Your-
total identity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then it gets worse from there. So every encounter that you have, be it police, and then you go to youth authority, then you go to prison, and you see counselors and people that document you, they use as a springboard anything that's been written before. So that's their new starting point. So like,
So your identity just goes and gets worse
oh,
and
it's
worse and worse,
fucked. You're fucked.
whether
You're
it's
just,
accurate
you're
or not. Generally,
usually not accurate.
Right.
No,
Right.
it's usually meant. I think that ultimately they are well intentioned. Here's the backhanded kind of way that fits is
Sure.
like they're wanting to keep society safe. They believe themselves in a law enforcement role, and so prison staff are like, we need to really document the shit out of this guy to keep him in like forever. If he rehabilitates, fine, in spite of us, but we're gonna, we don't
Keep him
want
here.
situations. Yeah, they
Sure.
just that's their job. That's what they see as their job.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Can we talk about the story
sure.
and how it happened?
Mm-hmm.
Let's let him fix
Your beeps.
You okay?
Yeah. Old.
I know.
Fucking fuck.
I know.
I
Didn't
know.
get better.
Ah.
I know. It's fucked. Yeah.
Are we good, babe? We good, Eric? Oh,
Oh.
sorry.
Oh,
babe.
here we are.
Here we are.
Back.
All right.
We're back.
All right.
Action.
It's
Probably
so
didn't need
hard.
to
Like
do
it's
that,
just
but-
so hard. Like to ask you to tell the story. Just
Yeah.
especially being from the inside. It's like because he's so much more than the story. But it's like
Sure.
it's such an important part of it.
Sure.
Can we share the
Sure.
story?
For sure. Yeah.
And I will offer that he is so open and
Yeah.
and part of your healing,
The
I
healing,
believe,
for
has
sure.
been just being open and being vulnerable and just this is what it is and
Yeah.
being able to ask anything. By the way, side note, my kids always want to know about food in prison and what his favorite foods were
Yeah.
and what he ate and what his treats were. When they first met him, they're like, can we ask him questions about prison? And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but let me find out.
Yeah.
And then he was like, they can ask me anything they want to
Anything,
know at any
ever.
time.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Always.
not
At any
that,
time, always.
It's not that part as
Yeah.
much as just the story.
Pancakes.
No, agreed.
Pancakes, by
I'm
the
just
way.
saying on the side note of that is that he is just
Side note,
open
side
book.
note.
Right.
Pancakes.
Yeah.
Pancakes. There's a shot of me shoving pancakes in my face hole, like,
yes,
at IHOP, like hours out,
out
because it was like, what do you want to do?
pancakes.
IHOP.
Yeah, which
I remember
that
IHOP
story
way
of
better than it wound up.
how you got out and all that. Like that's such a crucial part of it too. But can we tell the story
Sure.
of that?
Yes.
Start with that morning.
Lisa's being like,
Yeah.
Just
guardrails,
corralling
guys,
us.
Guardrails.
Yeah.
Just
Guys are
corralling us.
just
Yeah.
gonna you would fly off. and-
Yeah.
Right.
Fly off the rails.
Yeah. So went to the 12-step, limited, results. I got clean a little bit, but moved into the apartment. At the 12-step, I met a guy named Mike Ryan. And then he came to me when he learned that I had an apartment. I was like, I don't have a place. Could I possibly like crash on your couch or something for, a couple of weeks? And I was like, sure, dude. I thought I was like, so I invited him in. He stayed on the couch a couple of weeks. He was supposed to pay me a little rent. It'd be nothing. So I ultimately kicked him out, told him I have to leave. He threatened me on the way out, held a knife to my throat because I was like, he was like lollygagging and like taking a bunch of time. And I need to get someplace. I was like, I'll help you like box your stuff. And and he put me against a wall, put a knife to my throat and said, if you ever touch my shit again, I'll kill you. And I was like, I was not a violent guy. I was not a physical guy. I was like under 100 pounds at the time. And so, okay. And he goes, and I'm like, okay, good. He's done. Well, when he still lived there, I was going over doing chores, and I'd bring him over to earn money with me. And
To your parents' home.
yeah, so he came to see, I guess, our house as a source of money. And so he left LA and he went back to Gulfport, Mississippi. He said to stay where his dad lived. And yet, like 2 weeks before my mom was murdered, he shows up back in town. And the night before she was murdered, he shows up at the house asking her if he could do some work for money. And she says no, she didn't have any work to do, and sent him on his way. Next day, I was out on one of my perpetual job hunts. That's another thing. I was kind of like, here's your apartment, but you got to find a job. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking. And I had like long hair. My booking photo was tragic, but it's also kind of comical because I had like Rosanna Dana hair.
Typical stoner.
My driver's license
Stoner,
is
yeah.
hilarious. It's typical stoner.
Mhm.
And so I was on a job hunt. One of the repairs that I'd done to my car within the week was to put new shock absorbers on the back. My 66 Mustang I was telling you about. I heard a banging in the car. I looked under the car and one of the shocks had come loose. Like the nut that I put on the top had come loose and it was gone. And the shock was banging into the bottom. I had to fix it. So I went over, I changed into my work clothes at my apartment, went over to my parents' house to borrow my mom's jack from her Cadillac. Because the jack with it's just like a scissors jack, and I didn't trust it to like get under the car. And so she had like a really sturdy bumper jack because it's a Cadillac. And so I arrive, and she would normally come out on the porch. My car had a really loud exhaust, and she didn't. And so like she would come out, and this day she didn't. And I was like sorting the nuts that I'd bought that morning, getting ready to do the repair. Still nothing. So I went to the door, knocked. The dog was inside the house. We had these windows that ran the length of the height of the flank in the front door. I could see her. I could see the dog inside. And so if the dog was in the house, that meant either my mom or my dad or both were home, because when they left, she'd be put in the backyard so she didn't go to the bathroom in the house. Make sense? We didn't have a doggy door. So it was weird. Like at that time of that day, I expected my mom to be there, but she wasn't there. So I was like, eventually, I'm like, I'm going to look in. I got to see what's going on inside. So I start walking around the house to look inside. And from the back window, 2 windows, I saw her on the floor. Didn't have a key, had given my key back. So I looked for the hide a key. It was gone. Ran to a window that I knew how to get in, but I needed to take these little brads that were like nailing the screen in place. Got them out, climbed in, found my mom. Freaked the fuck out. I mean, worst thing you could imagine. I mean, she'd been stabbed, she'd been beaten, left for dead. But she was still alive, but she wasn't answering. So I was just like screaming, crying, freaking the fuck out. Called the paramedics, called the police, my dad, all of whom arrived. And my dad after the police and the paramedics. And the police and the paramedics, well, not the paramedics, but the police ultimately went, long-haired kid, blood on his hands because I tried to give first aid. Like they called back, the fire department called back and said, apply direct pressure. So I was trying to do that, but just freaking the fuck out. I was just not even there. I was high that day too. So that morning I had done some speed. So I was like out of my mind, just in a state that, nothing that I was doing any good. Like nothing. It was just spinning out of control. Like, here's my mom. She wasn't answering, but she's breathing. So I called, and anyway, they were trying to ask me questions, like, and I was answering as best I could. I was like, I got here, I don't know, 20 minutes, whatever. Went just everything that I just told you. And they just kept asking questions, and my mom is still inside and the paramedics are still working on her. And I'm like, get her to the hospital. I was freaking out. Get her to the hospital because I thought they're just wasting time.
Sure.
I didn't know. But the cops wrestled me to the ground, did a chokehold, wrestled me to the ground because I wouldn't I don't know why.
Calm down.
You
'cause your
couldn't calm
mom
down
was-
because your mom, yeah,
You know.
because you're giving your mom first aid.
Yeah. So I was like pacing in circles, and they
Yeah.
were like, you need to, and I was like, they handcuffed me. And that was the last, I saw freedom. It was like blood on your hands, handcuffed.
Hi.
You're not going
Long
home.
hair.
You're not
Yeah.
going home.
Right.
And so the detective that was assigned to investigate the case, because it was believed to be an impending homicide. She hadn't passed yet. She hadn't died yet. She died in emergency surgery about 3 hours later. So homicide was notified, and he arrives on the scene and is like, won't take the handcuffs off. We got to talk. I want to go to the hospital. No, we're going to Van Nuys instead. I want to go to Encino. No, we're going to Van Nuys. And that was it.
And Dad is there on the scene at the time.
Dad arrived when I was in the back of the car before the detective. That's right. Before the detective arrived. My dad arrived, saw me in the back, came over, asked the cop, what's going on? Well,
Your dad's
your
an
wife's
attorney again.
My dad's a civil attorney. He's elder law. He's like wills and estates and probate and stuff like that. So he knows just enough about being an attorney to be, I don't want to say this dangerous, but I mean he knew enough about the legal profession to have faith in it. And lawyer jokes were all jokes. There was no reality. There was no, basis for them. But my trial attorney proved us wrong because he was shitty in the extreme, so he gave the appearance of doing a good job, but he completely let me down.
Completely.
So that was where my dad was at. He was and okay, so he what's going on? Your wife's been taken to Encino emergency. And so he's like, why is my son in the car? Can he come with me? No, he can't. Why not? The detective's on the way to talk to him. Haven't arrived yet. Why? Can't I just take him? No, you can't take him. So he's denied. He goes, okay, stay here, do what they say. I'm going to go see mom and I'll be back. So he goes. He's with her, or he's out in the hall when she passed. Meanwhile, I'd been taken to Van Nuys police department and interrogated, and by this detective that basically, so what people don't realize about police encounters is that if they're investigating a crime, they can lie to you. They're just there to figure out what happened, not even focusing in this. I mean, looking back in hindsight, he was totally going to be like, this kid did it. And he was. He thought he'd solved the crime from the moment that he arrived.
Right.
And he wanted to get me down there. And they try to get you talking as much as possible. Like this that we just did, gravy, gold for a cop.
Sure.
Because they want you talking because you're on the record as XYZ. And then all they have to do is pick apart XYZ.
Right.
Say that's a lie. One of the things that I told them truthfully, was that I'd seen my mom from outside the windows in the backyard. Saw her from that window, thought I saw her, went to the next one, definitely saw her head. He says, well, you couldn't have seen in the windows. It was bright and sunny that day. There was so much glare on the window that nobody could have seen it, which was a fucking lie.
Right.
I totally did.
Right.
Everything that he said was a fucking lie.
It was a lie.
To
And this
make
is
me
one of-
look
And
like I was
were
lying.
you did you start feeling? I mean, you were so young. You were did you feel were you questioning your own self at that time?
No.
Never.
I have, and to this day have, an unbroken chain of memory, and there's no blacking out. There's no no, those fucking people are crazy,
Right.
But
Right.
try getting listened to. You're a 17-year-old kid with, a
Stoner.
documented history of
Yeah.
drugs
Right.
and arguing with your parents. Cause what kid doesn't, right? Take a snapshot. It's the least flattering snapshot period to take of
our lives.
an adolescent.
100%.
you're
And
like-
to be judged on that and to be thought
Yeah.
of as this is who you are in these teenage years.
That's
and
exactly it.
it goes with you forever.
Yeah.
And wasn't the officer or the detective, wasn't this like one of his first cases? And so he had to
It was one of his it was one of his first homicide cases. I don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like a seasoned
Sure.
anything.
So
Like
he's like, I'm gonna solve this.
he said, I have solved this. They like handed him, his homicide shield, his badge, and said, what you gonna do with this one? And there was a senior guy that was sort of his partner, ostensibly like, making sure that he learned the ropes or did things right or whatever. And what a feather in your cap to go first homicide case, or one of the first ones, 15 minutes had it solved.
Right.
But he shot from the hip and he fucking missed.
Right.
Like he hit an innocent kid.
Right.
And he was 35-ish at the time. I was 17, obviously. Just freaked out. Like you're at the mercy of adults in that situation. So I consider it like child abuse, really.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah.
So he says, this is a lie. All these things are a lie. We're arresting your son. My dad comes to tell me that mom died. He arrived at the police department probably around 4. She died at like 3:27 in surgery. And so the detective, of course, like lets him in and, lets us talk in the interrogation room, which in hindsight is the place that's bugged. It's like the room where like the microphones are. Right. So like he was hoping for, oh God, I can't believe, what I did, Dad, or something like that. Of course, that's not, but it doesn't matter because like they'll ignore things that exonerate you. They'll ignore exculpatory evidence and focus on anything that they could make out of what they want to make of, the case against you. And so
confirmation bias, right? We look for things that confirm our story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We set about to cherry pick the facts as they actually are to support whatever we decided was the case beforehand.
Right.
Yeah. So arrested. So my dad's like, okay, like when can I take my son home? It's like, oh,
he's not going home.
No.
So that
go see him at
he
juvenile.
lost his wife and his son
in one
day.
And
you lost your mom and your freedom in one day.
In one day.
And didn't
and
have
life as I knew it, just everything, life as I knew it.
Right. Gone.
Absolutely everything.
Gone.
Gone.
And no time to grieve the loss of your mom because now you're in the survival for your life.
Yep.
Go to court, have the case.
Surreal. Everything changed. Like literally, like when you're arrested, you go from like shoes and, and water bottles and microphones and whatever you got in your life to like naked passing into a place that is absolutely alien to like a suburban Sherman Oaks kid.
Sure.
I didn't know from anything in there. And like, so here's life. Here's your new life. And fuck.
So you get found guilty in court. They send you to prison. And that first night in prison, when they actually close the doors, what is happening for you?
Oh yeah, it's nuts. Well, they closed plenty of doors. So I was 3 years fighting my case before they convicted me. So plenty of doors got closed. When they first closed doors, it's bizarre. Dialing back to the first night in, like they closed my door at Silmar and I just buried my head in my sheets and just wept for, it was so bizarre.
You lost your mom.
Everything.
And you're dealing with that alone as
Everything.
a 17-year-old.
Everything. I didn't know what even like remained. Like my dad was somewhere, but like all these people had me contained. And then the next day they took me up to see the psych and he's like, so how do you feel about being here at Silmar? Like cheery. And I'm like, leave a fucking gate open. I'll show you how I feel about being here at Silmar. Okay. And he writes in the file, closes it up. That night, they're like, Lisker, meds. Like, meds? What are you talking about, meds? What's meds? You're going to take this. What is this? You're going to take it or we're going to force it on you. It was Mellaril. So they like medicated me from day one.
And not just medicated. I mean, let's talk about medication. That's not just medicated. That's zombie.
Yeah.
That's we don't want to feel anything from you. We don't want to hear a word from you. We want you to shut everything off and just do exactly as you're told and behave.
Yeah.
It is tranquilizing, dissociative,
Yeah.
anesthetic, all of those contributing factors where you are just going to comply with anything and everything we say. And
Yeah.
you're just going to be a good boy and just do what you need to do.
Yeah. They don't prescribe it anymore, I don't think.
No, they don't.
I think it's
Been
like
banned.
Thorazine is a cousin of it, but it's like all kinds of things, all kinds of side effects and lasting.
Seroquel, I think, is the one they're using now.
Yeah, Seroquel, which anecdotally, I mean, much lower dose is a fantastic sleep medication, super effective.
Right.
So
So they medicate you.
they
Get you
medicated
to
the
behave.
shit out of me. And the visiting room there in Sylmar was where my dad and I were able to get together and talk. And like the first week, he's like, "Who did this?" Like I'm like, "Dad, I didn't." You know, I know. I mean, I know. Like he knew his son, just like I, you know,
Unwavering
Knew
support
him.
from dad that never
Completely.
questioned your
completely,
guilt ever.
100%.
Yeah.
And well, who did it? So first week we had no idea. No idea.
Yeah.
I mean, who do you know? Second week, people had, in the interim, people were coming up to him going, "Jesus, like Mr. Lisker, like, you know, people that knew me and knew Mike Ryan said, you know, I'm so sorry you lost your wife, like, you know, your son, you know. Do you know Mike Ryan disappeared the day of the crime? Like he arrived back in town, like within like a couple, you know, 5 days, I think it was, before the murder. And he's in the wind. He's gone. Nobody's seen him since. And so he came and he said, "What about Mike Ryan?" And I'm like, "No." I literally said no. Like
Even after he had threatened your life.
even after I hadn't, like I was that.
Yeah.
So
you were that teenage.
to clue in, right? I was like a vacuous, clueless. Like I didn't know shit. Like I didn't even put that together. That's how. Like and now it's like. He said, "What am I?" Slowly it dawned on me because he kept hitting it. He went, was he obsessed with knives? People say he was like, oh yeah, like he had this throwing knife that he was throwing in the back of my apartment door, right? Yeah, he did do that, you know? Yeah, he did threaten me. And so my dad goes, "You know what, we got to let the police know about this." And I'm like, fuck. Still the police like are like, I'm a weed smoker. Like it was like a drug. Like you don't let on that you smoke weed to the police. So your police aren't your friends.
Right.
They're not like your enemy. Like I'm not like a
Police hater. But
I'm not like a parolee or something,
Right.
but I'm like, yeah, So I'm like, okay. So, but I read a letter to Detective Monsu and I said, you know, you need to come talk to me. I think I have leads. I have leads in this case that you need to, you know, surely by now you've realized that
But I didn't do this. You're still
it-
waiting for him
it's
to
a
realize his
comical letter.
mistake.
Like reading back on it, I'm like, fuck. But it was the best. We can only do what we could do, right? And we're all like doing our best in any given moment. That was my best. And I was like, I need to like let the police know. He comes out on April Fool's Day and interviews me. And I tell him about Mike Ryan. I tell him all that I know. I tell him everybody that knows Mike Ryan and me. I tell him about Palmer drug abuse. I tell him about an ex-girlfriend of mine who like dated him one time, as it turns out. I thought they had a relationship, but so all these people's names that I know, and he goes, finds him in Gulfport, Mississippi. He's already in custody again for trying to break into a woman's house and like steal some shit, right? He's already in custody again. It's been like, you know, from March 10th to like second week of April. So I think there was looking at it from my perspective now, like he was just desperate. He thought, shit, like my life is over.
Let me just go balls to the wall here.
Balls to the wall.
Yeah.
Commit crime, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
You know, when the police come, whatever.
Right.
You know, didn't work out that way. Detective Monsu found him after Detective Monsu had penned a 13-page police report, making it sound, remember I said they want you talking?
Yeah.
Well, he took the entire interview and he went, that was a lie, that was a lie, that was a lie, that was a lie, and like wrote about it as if, and then signed his name to it. So he was either going to go, I encountered the real person who did this. Bruce Lisker's innocent. What about this report? What didn't you sign this? So any case against Mike Ryan is unwinnable.
Right.
And you're an idiot, and you're, you yank that shield back to patrol, give tickets and stuff, or he's going to stick by his guns and say to the DA, I went to Mississippi and I convincingly cleared Mike Ryan. Had nothing to do with it. Which he did. So then he went to various hearings and he said blood on his yellow shirt, the T-shirt that he wore,
Trying to save your mom.
The Led Zeppelin. Yeah. But there was no blood on that yellow T-shirt. There were like smears on your hand. Those aren't inculpatory. Those are not inculpatory, especially if you've administered first aid. You'd expect that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the yellow shirt, he said, a pattern of blood spatter that I observed on the yellow shirt indicates to me that he was standing over his mother the moment that she received blunt force injuries that killed her. That's what he testified in court. There was no blood at all on the yellow shirt at all. It was grease. It was automotive grease from like working on my car because I had went and put my work clothes on to go fix the damn shock.
Right.
All of these things like could easily have been verified at the time, but he was already
committed to his story and
that I did it.
His badge.
That I did it. I think people are like, don't do this, but I like to give human beings credit. Like, I don't think that he conceived, over, bacon and eggs that morning that he was going to frame an innocent kid from Sherman Oaks. I don't think that happened that way. I think that he arrived at the scene, convinced himself, because if you look statistically, people are murdered by people that they know. The closer, the more likely.
Right.
Like family members, most likely to murder somebody.
Sure.
Like friends, next most likely. People you see at 7-Eleven, every day. Yeah. People you don't know, never. Like so rare that it,
Mm-hmm.
that it becomes a Ted Bundy situation. And you're like, wow, somebody that like kills somebody that.
Mm-hmm.
So in his mind, statistically, he's well on the right course.
Mm-hmm. Still,
it's wrong.
This man that sent you away for 26 years, the grace that you still are willing to show is incredible.
Yeah.
I will just offer you that.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all of this, as I'm thinking this motherfucker did this to you in your life.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I don't think he set off to do this that day. And it sort of just happened.
Well, let's not get
Let's not
ahead of ourselves.
However,
fuck that motherfucker. Because, and why I say that is because once it was just, blatantly obvious. He's still, to this day. I mean,
still,
he doesn't think he did anything, or he doesn't admit that he did anything wrong.
Did anything. So you were found guilty in court, and what did they sentence you to?
16 years to life, state prison, to be housed in youth authority until I'm 25 because I was a juvenile when I was arrested, but state prison.
So youth authority is until 25? I thought it was until 18.
No. Youth authority can hold you until your 25th birthday.
Okay.
They could extend it 1 year under extenuating circumstances, but 25.
So from 16 to 25, and your sentence wouldn't start until you go.
No, it started.
16,
you're
16?
definitely, you're definitely no. So like when you go to board, you get credit for all your like time served, including YA, as if you were in prison. So when you get a life sentence, they take the base term. Used to be. Now it's all different. Now you do the whole base term. But it used to be like 15 to life. You do 2/3 of 15. And then 13 months prior to that, they take you to the board for the first time because theoretically, I suppose, codified in the regulations, they want to be able to let you out on your very first opportunity. They're not so much interested in letting people out early, but it sounded good. So like that's kind of how it works. And all of the time that you have, when you're in jail, you get time and a half. So every day you do, you get time. You get credit for a day and a half served. Prison is like used to be like 1 for 1.
So then you're
into
there.
The weeds.
No, I mean it's like
fascinating.
It's all you had to do was obtain knowledge all those years. Like sometimes I sit there and I listen to you talk and you'll tell me facts and I'm like, oh, here goes Bruce again with his facts. And then I have to remind myself, well, all Bruce could do his whole life was get facts.
Right. He got a lot of facts.
He got a lot of facts.
That's right.
So let's go into the facts.
Okay.
So how did you, and the moment, what always intrigued me was the moment it was your father's passing, right?
Yes.
Where you obtained the resources to fight it.
Yep. Yep. So he was a lawyer, but he wasn't like the like make every dime I could possibly make kind of lawyer. He was like he didn't want to be a slave to work, so he didn't have enormous tons of like cash laying around, and he's not the kind of law where you get that. So he did what he could, but he would reach points where he just couldn't, at an emotional level, keep his nose in it too. So it was not just
Yeah.
finance; it was his health that was suffering. I have a letter that he wrote me that where I you just feel the anguish in the letter where he said, I have to put this on a shelf. This was a year and a half before his death in 1995. So he kept his head down and kept running it into that brick wall because the case wasn't meant to yield until it did. And I don't know why the things happen the way that they do, but it wasn't. We didn't get any breaks. Hired investigators went nowhere. Knew Mike Ryan did it. Like Detective Monsu's interview with Mike Ryan, like there's no doubt. You read this thing, right? You're the transcript of this interview. It's like he claimed he was 12 miles away from our house in Hollywood checking into a motel, like right around 11, which would have precluded his committing the crime that I discovered 10 minutes after 11, 15 minutes after 11. I don't know the exact time that I arrived, but right around there, you can't make that 12 miles, especially if you're living on the street and have no car. So he tried to offer up an alibi before he was told what time. Right. Checking at 11. Detective Monsu had gotten the motel registration slip where he checked in at 3. Plenty of time to get 4 hours. Yeah, you take a bus, you take this. Offered up that he had been in a knife fight with some black guy to pre-explain any blood somebody had seen on him. So he's acting in these ways that, like, if you read this, you're like, this kid's guilty as sin, and he's not very bright. But I forgot where I went.
So your dad passes away, leaves you money, gives you money so that you can hire.
Yeah, exactly. So $184,000 in life insurance, and I was able to just reinvigorate the thing because I'm already damaged by it all. I'm sitting in a cell and I'm just banging my head against the wall trying to prove things. So I hired a series of lawyers, and the first 2 sets of lawyers ripped me off. First one for $7,500. The next one for, I think I'd given him $74,000 or $94,000, including a loan in there. You're in prison. You're kind of at the mercy. Like
I would take kind of out of the sentence.
Thank you for taking my case type of thing.
Right.
Here's money.
More money. So private investigator gets involved, starts opening the case.
A really good private investigator came along with that second lawyer. And really, he was a former cop in Pomona for 10 years, retired, honest as the day is long, somewhere to the right of Ronald Reagan. We don't agree politically, but he saved my life. This guy, Paul Ingalls, he reinvestigated my case from the ground up, and just once he realized that he was dealing with an innocent man, he refused to let it go, even after I ran out of money.
And how old were you when Paul came in the picture?
I think it was just before 2000, right around 2000. So right around there. Yeah.
So how long had you been in prison for at that point?
Since 83.
Since 83.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you know?
17.
Did you know when Paul came in, and did you know he was going to be the one to get you out?
Pretty soon. It didn't take long. Like at first, like he didn't know. Like I don't have a tattoo that says I'm innocent,
Yeah.
Even if I did, and
wouldn't necessarily believe that. Although, yeah.
Right. Maybe, probably not. Crazy might be a better term. Pretty soon after, because his work ethic was like, nobody I dealt with was better at getting doors open, talking to people who were, reluctant witnesses, documenting it. The guy has a great vocabulary, and he puts together a fantastic sentence. You don't always get that when you're dealing with folks that deal with you when you're in prison.
Right.
Like you don't get the cream of the crop. He was amazing. And so we started making some headway, but the holy grail for any prisoner is well, an evidentiary hearing, but short of that, is to obtain your police file, like to get everything that the police like used against you. Like, is the evidence remaining? That's, you know,
You hope that the evidence is remaining because then you can
we didn't
re-examine
know
it.
what was we didn't know what was remaining.
Gotcha.
We didn't know at that point.
Is it hard for people in prison to get their
It's
records?
impossible.
It's
It's
impossible.
impossible. So when you get arrested and then they're trying you, you have what's called discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So I want a copy of all of the evidence that you're going to use against me. That's discovery. They have to provide it to you, especially exculpatory evidence, evidence which tends to exonerate you. They really need to turn it over. And failure to do that is a reversible error called a Brady violation. Well, there was some of that in there. But they do, once you're convicted, that discovery goes away. Like you're like, nope. I mean, you see it with cases where they refuse to allow the DNA evidence, blood evidence to be DNA tested. That's kind of changed. Courts are more, reluctant to let that kind of thing stand, and they order, testing, but you're shut off.
Right.
Such as it was with mine, like all of the police files, the murder book. Murder book is huge. The murder book is a huge file, in my case, that the police maintain when they're investigating the case. Every scrap of anything goes in the murder book. It's supposed to. Largely it does. So like it's gold. Like from somebody who, in the meantime, I was sitting in my jail cell looking at every scrap of paper I did have, which was police reports that had been given to me, all the transcripts, and going, well, that doesn't fit with that. That conflicts with that. And drawing up ultimately it was a 63-page document with 700 plus footnotes because I was on a computer for my job and I had a good boss. That type of thing you really can't do unless you have everything. The murder book is everything. So that's why I'm coming around to that. Yeah. It's the Holy Grail. You want it. You need it.
Right.
Paul would go down to the tombs, they're called, LAPD's tombs, where they keep all these, and that, talk to the clerk at the tombs. I want the Lisker case. Do you have the Lisker case? Yeah, we got the Lisker case. It's, yep. Can I get a copy of it? Nope. But you just said it's, nope. Can't give it to you, Paul. He was going down there so much that they'd be like, can't do it, Paul. How you doing, man? Because he was a former cop. So they wanted to like talk shop and all that good stuff. But hey, can I get the Lisker? No. He just kept saying no. And ultimately, though, he goes, you know what? You need to file. Well, I had discovered that Detective Monsu, when you're a life prisoner and you're getting ready, sorry, I keep going back in circles, but you need to. When you're a life prisoner and you go to board, you have a right to look in your file. Go through your central file that the prison maintains.
Only when you're a life prisoner?
Only when you're a life prisoner. You could get an Olson review if you're not a life prisoner, but there's no pressing reason for it.
Got it.
As a lifer, you have a right to contest things that are in there inaccurately. And so you need to see what's in there to see if it's in it, with a few exceptions, confidential files and stuff you can't see. But so one of these times going through my file, every time you go to board, the police agency that arrested you and the prosecutor that put you in jail are solicited for their opinion as to whether or not you'd be a good risk on parole. Monsu would get these letters, and it's so funny. Like you could tell, like early on, like he was doing his own letters, and he's a functional illiterate. Like he's an idiot. Mm-hmm. Like he's like every other word was misspelled. Right. Punctuation was like he threw darts at the page. He's so fucking idiot. And then like he apparently like got, a receptionist or like somebody who like typed his letters for him because it got better. And then by the end, this last one was Bruce Lisker, if he's maintaining his innocence, is lying. Subsequent owners of the house contacted me and said that they had found approximately $150, which was the amount stolen in the crime and missing, never recovered, in the attic, stashed in the attic above Bruce Lisker's old bedroom, thus confirming our theory of the crime and removing any doubt that you should not listen to Mr. Lisker's
and not let him out.
And never let him out. Never let him out. He should be kept in prison for as long as the law allows, which is life.
Right.
He tried to murder me with the weapon of prison. Put bluntly. Like he tried to murder me. So, yeah.
Okay, so that day,
So that day.
that
Okay.
day that we
We bounced
figured
around.
out,
Yeah.
we put the case. The detective is like, "You're going."
Mhm.
What was that day? What was that day? You're going home.
You're going home.
That day. Okay.
Well, prior to that, they had said, you're going to get out. We've solved this. We're going to let
Oh,
you out.
yeah.
But then there's years in between. You're
Well,
going to
they
get out
didn't-
and
they-
years.
Yeah. So what they didn't say, we're going to let you out. So
Yeah.
Paul Ingalls was like, so, okay. So this detective, so that letter was a lie. I'll get to it really quick.
Yeah.
Really is a relative term. Who am I kidding?
But we do have kids to pick up, so we do kind of get it.
Oh, okay. How much longer do we
I
have?
don't know. What are we at?
1:37.
We have until 2:00.
Oh, okay. All right.
Here we go.
So this letter is full of lies. I go, Paul, this is bullshit. I didn't like, I can't see. There wasn't even a way. I didn't even have a way to, this is total bullshit.
Right.
It's total bullshit. There's no
Right.
way into the attic above my room. It's bullshit. Mike Ryan didn't stop after he killed my mom, go out to the thing, get a ladder, come back in, move the little square,
it up
climb
there,
up
right.
in there, walk 20 feet over there in our attic with spiders and hide the money and then leave. That's bullshit. He's lying. Paul Ingalls verified that nobody had found this money, did a deed search, all of that stuff, got sworn declarations from everybody. I filed an internal affairs complaint, which we hoped would yield us the murder book.
Right.
Like it was a way to get the murder book. They ultimately assigned it to a detective, a sergeant named Jim Gavin, who did a really honest and amazing investigation, reinvestigated this murder case from the ground up. Just short of a year. An officer that's accused has a year statutorily for this thing to be wrapped up, an internal affairs complaint. Just short of it, like weeks short of the year. They are like picking up on what Gavin's doing. He's like documenting how I got fucking railroaded, and they yanked it from him and assigned it to somebody else who said, no, unfounded, didn't happen. Detective Monsu didn't do anything wrong and denied my claim, basically. But meanwhile, we had gotten the murder book. So it worked out. With the murder book, we were able to like read. One of the things Gavin did is submit the footwear impression evidence, the bloody footprint that was found inside the house, the footwear impression that matches it found in the mud outside the house, a shoe impression on my mother's head, on her scalp, right? That the police were like, oh, of course, those are Bruce Lisker's. Detective Monsu testified it very closely resembled the shoes that I was wearing. It had never been sent to a footwear impression expert. So Gavin sent it to LAPD's footwear impression expert, who said, those aren't Bruce Lisker's shoes. Like the bloody shoe print in the house. And the prosecutor was like, if Bruce Lisker's to be believed, where's evidence of another person in the house? There it is, right there. Years later,
Here you are.
been in the file all this time. All of that goes to court. Ultimately, they're like, yeah, you're innocent.
What did that feel
You're
like
in
to
court.
finally have that validation of somebody looking at you and saying you're innocent?
Yeah. Well, so it was in stages. So like the innocent part was to get me back into court. Ironically, like you're banned from court because you waited too long. Thank you, President Clinton, who signed the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, which imposed a 1-year time limit for you to get a petition into court. Asinine. But anyway, so I had to prove my innocence such that no reasonable juror would now convict me in light of new evidence to get into court over that time bar. And so I got into court by proving my innocence in that regard. And then the other overturning the conviction was just on other not procedural grounds. It was on ineffective assistance of counsel and false evidence claims specifically. So it felt amazing to be in front of a court, federal district court, who they don't take light looks at things, like dug into it with like law clerks, looked at every nuance of the case. Anything that was ever exculpatory, they completely dismantled.
Yeah.
Like my attorneys did, and the courts went, you've completely dismantled this case. There's nothing of this case. So if Bruce Lisker is guilty, it's not based on anything that was shown to the jury. So it's just bullshit, right, is what they said. They didn't say that, but I said it like that. I'm paraphrasing. Bullshit. And so they overturned the conviction.
Okay, and so like Lisa said, that day you get
day.
out. What is the first
sorry.
thing?
Yeah.
I said I was going to get there fast.
Yeah.
Okay. So we knew it was going to be like today or the next day, the next day. Finally, it's like, no, it's going to be tomorrow morning. I'm like, somehow I slept.
Yeah.
So I managed to get myself to sleep. And like 5:30 in the morning, they're like, Lisker, they want you at R&R with all your stuff. I'd packed up all my stuff, given away
This is 20, how many years later?
26 years,
26
5 months,
years.
5 months, 3 days. Yeah.
So they call you, you go.
And I go, like, I wheel my big laundry cart up there with like 3 boxes. It's all my stuff in it. And it's the place that you go to pick up packages.
Yeah.
Right. But I'd never gone to it and like kept going.
Right.
Kept going.
And so you're walking like
got out. It's surreal.
Yeah.
There's no way to explain what it feels like.
And at this point, though, you're going out to no mom, no dad.
No, he died in 95. She died obviously in 83.
So who picks you up?
So Paul picks me up with his truck. So my dad remarried to Joyce, changed her name to Joy. She was just this mentor and just heart connection, tethered to the world and reality and humanity and love and compassion and lifeline. Absolutely. And then when my dad died, she ultimately met somebody else and got married to him. And then she died like a year before I came home. So like everybody's
So
like,
she
gone.
wasn't even there.
No.
So it was you and the detective.
So it was me.
And then how'd you find your way in love out of that? How'd you find your human connections after 26 years?
There was an amazing community of family and friends, like chosen family level kind of stuff, like that Joy had put together and just attracted to herself, being the amazing human she was. And so they were all there for me. Everybody was there for me. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Wow.
To have that.
And then you just showed up into the world. And how did you reestablish yourself? I mean, there was a little something that helped you because of.
I had like 20 grand left, 26, I think. 26. Yeah,
when you came out.
When I came home. So that I'd managed to like tell the attorneys, I don't have anything left. I don't have anything left.
Yeah.
There's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. Because I needed a subsistence. I needed something. So I wasn't
Yeah.
going to give them like my last dime. So I had that. Had to buy clothes, had to buy a car, had to buy stuff, a computer and phone.
And what was your first meal?
Pancakes.
Pancakes.
Yeah. IHOP
pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's fast forward to the family, to getting together. What's the future now like for Bruce? What is future hopes for Bruce after all this? And now that you have newly discovered family and nephews and
it's heart connection. That's the most important thing for me about anything is like being good to people and just love is all there is. Unless we go to that other place where there's fear and there's hate and there's that, and life's too damn short. So I just want to live as healthy in existence and as, be scrupulous as possible, but not overly so, but just loving with everybody. And like I've said to Sarah, like we have this unique opportunity to like be brother and sister, but to not have any baggage, which is trippy. Like nobody has that. Like so few people have that. And it just, here you guys go. You're adults and you can like,
you have all these life experiences behind you that make you appreciate your relationship and appreciate each other. One is just bald and one is blonde.
Yeah.
And this right here, my friends, is the definition of the show up show. Yep. And Bruce, I love having you in our life. And I love sharing this story and the fact that we sat down just months ago and you were willing to try and figure out how to use the equipment and how to start a podcast for us. You're like, I don't know.
Couch for us.
I don't know how to do. How does this make you feel to see all of this now?
Oh, this is great, man. You guys are doing the thing. And like, I was conceptually going to like try to do the thing. I could not do this well. You guys are rocking.
Concrete and his team have it together. They're pretty cool. They're pretty damn cool. I'm lucky to have good friends. And that goes right back to the circle. And we're lucky to have you. And thank you when we felt like we didn't have anything and we forgot our resources around us. You were there and you were sitting in a room with all of our tears. So compassionate. We love you, Bruce Lisker.
Love you so much.
We love you.
So much.
Get ready to show up with Khoolaid and Sarah. It's the Show Up Show, baby.